Clyde.
Yes.
Hop into this stallion of an Air Force.
Let's do it.
Because it's time to go to the National Museum of U.S. Air Force.
Up we go.
Up we go.
Into the wild blue yonder, flying high with the rest of the world.
No, my dear, but I wish I had gladiators. That would have made it so much cooler. Let's go.
Buckle up, because we're taking a trip to Dayton, Ohio to visit the National Museum of U.S. Air Force. It's the oldest and largest aviation museum in the world, preserving history and heritage of the Air Force, all while inspiring our youth and educating the public.
The best reason to come and spend a few hours here is because in one trip here, you can travel through more than 100 years of technological and cultural and military history, and you can see things that you can't see anywhere else. And you can learn all the stories that connect them together and leave with a picture of why the Air Force and air power has been such a critical component of our national defense for more than 100 years.
With roughly 19 acres of indoor exhibit space, the museum displays over 300 aircraft along with hundreds of separate exhibits that showcase different topics and interesting stories. It even has engaging simulators to give you a real-life air and space experience. It's truly one of a kind.
The things that attract people who love airplanes are obvious. They're big and shiny and giant, and this is the place to see that. But among all those things are all kinds of other things that illustrate the cultural history of the Air Force, the personal history, the small things, uniforms, medals, equipment, toys even, mascots, things people carried and used, things that describe their daily lives and why they served and what it meant to them. Those are the emotional touchstones that connect the machines with the people and make culture.
And it's that generational connection that builds a greater sense of empathy through the aircraft and stories.
One of the most emotional stories in this whole place is the return of prisoners of war from Southeast Asia. Some of them were held prisoner in North Vietnam for 5 years or so under very, very harsh conditions. And when that war came to an end, the Air Force was assigned to go and retrieve those prisoners. The first airplane that carried prisoners out of North Vietnam and back to freedom is in this museum, and you can go into that airplane and see the inside of it and learn the story of how that whole event happened. This place is a time machine. This is a real-life time machine where, with a little bit of imagination and a little bit of willingness to see into the past, you can connect to stories that are 100 years old by looking at the things they used, the things they carried, and the stories and experiences that they had. You can go into the past here, and that's what this is about.
Boy, was that a trip, and Allie's here with us now to relive that experience. Allie, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm an airplane geek, everybody knows that, but for you who may not necessarily be one, what was the moment for you?
Oh man, Clyde, I think this is the hard part because there's so many emotions when you walk into that museum, right? Because it's so vast. It's 19 acres of indoor exhibit. So you're looking at these amazing, beautiful, giant planes, and it's exciting and it's fun in that sense to see it so up close in person, but then there is that emotional tie that was mentioned, knowing that a lot of these planes have so much historical value And I can't honestly pinpoint one specific story because they all have beautiful, amazing moments in them. But because it was one of the last planes that we walked past at the end, the boxcar, the plane that dropped the fat boy over Nagasaki, I don't know why, that just really sticks with me. Standing next to that and seeing it in person and seeing the size of the bomb right next to the plane, that one really got me.
You know what, for the two of you, when I was listening to him, I was getting emotional on just some of the stories that he's talking about, some of the history behind it. Isn't it an emotional experience kind of being there and reading and listening to these stories?
I'll let you take that one, Clyde.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of that for me. I mean, there were a number of things. Allie, I told you, I walked in, there were some planes I absolutely had to see that I'd seen before.
Yes.
And I went and saw them. Yeah, I did. But the thing that was most interesting to me was the dog with the parachute. That story
I knew
comes.
you were going to bring that one up.
Absolutely. That story comes back from the Berlin airlift, and the dog went along unauthorized on missions, and finally the man in command of the whole thing said, "Hey, put a parachute on that dog," and the dog became kind of a symbol of that whole thing.
Yeah, and they did a really great job of building a little replica of that dog. So they're, all from the uniforms to the boots to the medals that was stated in. Another thing that I kind of thought was interesting and fun, and Clyde, I'm not sure if you walked over and saw this, but the hand that Walt Disney had also, when you see a lot of those paintings and the drawings on the sides of the planes and how they were involved during wartime, kind of seeing a sketch through of the time as to how they would come up with some of those fun designs, I thought was also very interesting.
Yes, Allie, but we got to get to the key thing. Remember the simulator? You and me in the simulator? I flew the simulator, and when I came out, what did the guy say? What did he say?
You probably were thinking, why did you cut that out of the piece? He said that Clyde flew as if he had flown for years and as a professional pilot would fly. I did cut it out. I just felt like
wow.
And then he kind of messed it up by saying when the teenagers come, they fly the thing all crazy and have a great deal of fun and shoot down more planes than we did. Okay, fine.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the other part too, is there's so much to see and do for the family if you go and bring the kids, do the simulators, lace up your sneakers because it's a lot of walking, go early, and it is free.
Just remember, Allie, I flew like the real pilots.
You will never let me live it.
That's why you could edit it, Allie, because you knew he'd bring it up. That's right. So